Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long. This is The Writing Life, and my guest today is poet Tim Whitsel. And how can I broach this? Let me say, I wrote a book at one point, and I was pleased when somebody gave me their feedback. They said, "I'm so glad you wrote a good book, because what do you say if it's not good?" You smile and say, "Gee, that was interesting." We've had some folks on the show who wrote something interesting, but Tim's work is more than interesting, it's good, and I was just so impressed with it that I'm really pleased that you're here, and I want to hear from you and
Thank you so much.
Find out how you got so good. So in fact, actually, I was going to save this till later, but what is the draw of poetry for you? How did you get here?
I think it probably started, I tell people that I wrote my first poem breaking up with my first girlfriend.
Okay, sure, emotional.
And I was, I don't know if I had a driver's license at the time. It was in northern Indiana.
Okay.
I'd ridden my bicycle out to her
Right.
house where she lived on the other side of town.
Okay.
And we sort of broke up about 2 or 3 weeks in. And that long ride back, I had a lot of time to think.
Okay.
In a sort
So
of
she
rhythmic way.
She didn't get to hear the poem.
Oh, probably, no.
Okay, all right.
Most decidedly.
Yeah. And did she suffer in this, or was she
Oh, no.
just a broken heart?
Yeah.
No, but that's kind of what poetry is
Yeah.
Or at least it can be, emotional and kind of the big events.
Well, with the bicycle, I had solitude and I had the
Right.
cadence, and
There you go.
all of it worked out.
Yeah. I asked Kim Stafford about poetry one time, and kind of what draws us to it, and you know who Kim is, and he said, well, it's the other way around. We have to work at prose, because poetry, the syncopation and the rhythm is part of us, and I'm thinking of the bicycle and the rhythm of that.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Same thing for me.
Yeah. So we want to talk about your books. Wish Meal, #1, what in the world, where'd that title come from?
Well, it's actually a poem in the book called Wish Meal.
Okay.
In which I'm writing in the persona of a woman
Okay.
in the Ohio River Valley. But wish meal sort of came to mean, sort of like a dream, like fish meal or blood meal or wish meal.
Okay.
The sort of grain of dream. And it seemed to represent a lot of the things. Longing is one of the things, and longing and belonging are two of the primary themes in that book, and wish meal seemed to capsulize on all of that.
Okay. Well, let me read what somebody else has said about that, and I think you've touched on a little bit, and I think this is maybe a blurb in the book. One of the book's projects is to describe the trajectories of longing that make up a search for home. What does it mean to reside here on Earth, among forests and rivers, our relationships with humans and non-humans and places, the past and its corollary, memory? How do we know when we're home? And I thought that was moving. Do you recall that?
I'm not.
Not familiar with it? This may have been a critique or an online review of
I'm really
your work.
interested to find out. Who
Yeah,
that
well,
is, 'cause
I'll get that
it's
for
pretty
you.
Dead on.
Well, I thought so too. And so maybe talk a little bit thematically about your book.
It's kind of a migrant's story.
Okay.
I came west right after high school
Mm-hmm.
To go to college in the Puget Sound area in Seattle, and I've been on the West Coast pretty much ever since, but always trying to find a place to put my roots down, a place to not just own but be owned by.
Okay. In other words,
as
really
a
be a part of it.
community,
Right.
as a person growing apples, garden,
Okay.
raising my kids, that
Yeah.
whole larger sense of
Yeah.
ownership and residency.
Was there a time, and I'm really kind of, it's like they say asking for a friend. Was there a time that you didn't feel, that you felt you left your home, that you weren't yet at home, but you'd left your home?
Sometimes I still feel that way.
Okay.
I just returned from Iowa, where my father and older brother now live.
Okay.
And my father just turned 93, which is pretty remarkable in itself.
It is.
But family, I think, sometimes is a kind of catalyst for thinking
course.
about where we are.
So what's the
how we
definition of
stand.
home? And maybe it's family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was raised in a family that sort of subscribed to the old gospel hymn, "This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through.
Okay.
My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue." And that never entirely satisfied me. I wanted to feel like this body that I'm in a carnal world, was a place that I could also speak to and involve myself in, not just as a sort of testing ground to see whether or not I was going up or down.
A visitor, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
at the end of whatever this passage is.
Sure. Pretty deep. And again, I think poetry is, I mean, anything can be a subject, but I think that the significant topics, and that's certainly one, is a good ground for poetry. Let me back up just a minute. Can I ask you where your family is in Iowa? And the reason I ask is I was from Davenport.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When my father joined my older brother, they live west of Muscatine
Oh, sure.
in Columbus Junction.
Okay.
And my brother's been there quite a few years. And my father moved out there to be closer to family
Yeah.
after he had some health issues. And I think he's been out there now 4 years.
Okay. And you're a Midwesterner originally. I assume.
I don't know. I'm an Oregonian.
Okay, now, all right. And the reason I say is just the weather's tough, and I think if you're older, maybe the weather can be.
Yeah. My father sold the family place in 3 weeks' time after a really, really severe winter.
Okay.
You know, he was 89 at the time, or 88.
Right.
And he had to shovel his way out to the mailbox, which was, 200 yards from the house.
Oh my gosh.
He decided he didn't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's better off in Iowa, though.
Well, not weather-wise, but I mean, maybe he's got some help.
Yeah, he's closer to
Yeah.
help.
No, it's we had some tough times there. Some injuries because of the weather.
Yeah.
My grandmother slipped down the driveway and fell and dislocated her arm. And
Well, if you had wood here, I'd be knocking on it.
yeah, yeah, you bet. So back to Wishmeal. I read this too. It says, in Wishmeal we encounter places, rites, decades and nights of perishable abundance. And I don't know that you said that, but I thought perishable abundance, boy, is that interesting. Can you wrap your head around that?
I might have actually written that.
Yeah, okay.
Which means I'm in trouble if I can't explain
Yeah.
it now. But
I mean, it's lovely. I'm just not sure what it's describing.
well, I'm a gardener, right? And
Okay.
I'm in the middle of looking at the fact that I've got apples on the ground and apples still on the tree, and there's more there than I can possibly make into sauce and cider and all the other things that I'm doing.
Sure.
It's a kind of gift that
Right.
you can't ever quite master, at least in my experience.
Uh-huh.
And this is the same time in terms of my vegetable garden, where you've got
It's just so much.
and family's a lot that way too. That it's an abundance, but it's fungible and perishable and vulnerable and
Take some looking after.
takes some looking after.
Yeah.
In ways that you never really figure out till you've already done it and go, whoa.
Yeah, yeah. There isn't a trial,
No.
a trial period. When you've got children, you've got children.
Right, and I think in past eras, or maybe if you live still in say a community like the Amish,
Okay.
if you're one of the older siblings in a family of 7 or 10,
Right.
then you get a sense of the sort of long hours and the tedium and the
Right.
constancy of what it means to care. But for most of us, it's a new experience.
Yeah. And I think in child rearing, I don't know that this figures into our topic here, but I think it's, in my case at least, it's changed over the years in that I think I was a better dad than my dad, and he just, he did the best he could because that's the way he was raised. My son, I have daughters, but my sons-in-law are better dads than I was, and so
Right.
I think you just learn as you go down.
Let's hope that
Let's hope so.
that continues.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I brag for you a little bit because you might not do it yourself. I read that in your poem Mudflat Allure, it won first place at the 2013 Northwest Poets Concord, and I may mispronounce this, but River de Seine, is that the
River Design.
design?
Yeah.
Okay. Was included in the anthology What the River Brings. Also, the elegy On the Day You Are Dying appeared in the June 2013 edition of Construction. So some real accolades, and again, what I've read was wonderful, and so congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we maybe talked about this a little bit, but well, in fact, we did because you wrote the first poem about your breakup. But I'm just interested in what brings it. Do you think poetry is natural? Maybe that's the way to approach this. In that, why? What draws us to that, and then why do we start doing it? And maybe
there's a compression in poetry.
Okay, I think you're right.
Allows us to encapsulate in sharper language than ordinary speech.
Okay.
Things that are intellectual but also emotional
Sure.
and figurative and
I think all that's true. I mean, that by definition. But I wonder how you found it. In other words, were you taught that, or is it just something in you?
oh, I've always, writing prose is the thing I've always thought, gosh, if I could just do that, because
maybe-
far more people, read
Prose.
prose than poetry. Poetry asks far more of the reader to collaborate
Yeah.
with the voice, to
Yeah.
collaborate with the poet.
Yeah.
Whereas fiction, for example, a novel takes you on a ride,
Right.
and you just sort of get in and hang on.
Kurt Vonnegut was pretty crusty, and he would get mad at people who would take like a weekend seminar. And he said, people think that because they can talk, they can write, and that it's really a different thing.
Yeah, I think that's quite true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think. He was also said, he compared a weekend literary conference to a weekend brain surgeon conference. That you're a teller at the 7-Eleven, but I think I'd always wanted to be a brain surgeon, so I'll go to this weekend class. And a little exaggeration, but maybe the lesson is that it's really kind of tougher. When it seems effortless, there's skill behind that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the French are credited with this saying, I would have made it shorter, but I didn't have enough time.
There you
in
go.
reference to
Yeah.
a piece of work.
Yeah. His name escapes me right this second, but the fellow who wrote Mystic River was given, he wrote a novel, sent it out, they approved it, and in fact I think it was published, but then sent the manuscript back with proposed changes because they wanted to make a sort of a Reader's Digest version of this.
Yeah.
And they asked him to read it and, you know, comment on that, maybe make any changes that he wanted to make, and sign it and return it. Well, when the guy showed up, the courier showed up at the door, he said, wait, got the paper out, the contract, signed it, didn't open the box, and sent it back. And then his editor called and said, gee, you know, that was awfully quick. Didn't you look at it? Well, and obviously he didn't because it wasn't open. And he said, no, I didn't look at it. If I could have written it shorter, I would have. So, you know, you're going to make the changes that you're going to make. That's not what I wrote.
Right.
But if that's, you know, you're the publisher, if that's what you want to do. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I suppose every author is different in how they respond to those sorts of
Right.
suggestions.
Sure. And another fellow had commented that, and this was more of a kind of Robert Parker kind of a guy, and it may have even been him. But he said, people will read his work and say, well, did you consider fill in the blank, you know, another character or a plot twist or something? And he said, I guarantee you, I thought of them all, and this is what I picked. What's on the paper is what I chose.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Tim, I told you before we started that I was so impressed with your work. Can I get you to read some of that?
Yeah, the first poem you were wanting me to read is a poem called Great Basin. And it's set over at a place where I had an artist residency at Playa
Right.
in south central Oregon.
Okay.
And it's in Cirque. About 2 or 3 years ago it was published in Cirque. It isn't in either of my books as of yet. Maybe in the next one.
It should be.
It's called Great Basin. To catch the sunrise you must hold like a rock jack, then flatten to paper for the sumi of strung geese. To catch the light you must speak grass and learn the memes of denim and fresh snow. To catch the cloud you must murmur with a trio of aspen and smirk at heroics of fungi. To catch the wind you must furl like amber in whiskey, glitter with hail between your collar and your nape. To catch the night you must cock ears like a quintet of does. You must enter without breaking like a vole.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, I read that and was taken by it, but hearing you read it, I was struck by something else. And because we were talking about the allure of poetry or what draws us to it. And I think it's hearing, one of the things is hearing familiar words in a really different way. And I think that's what you've done there. It's just, to me, it's exciting. I love that. So, one more.
One more. Okay, this one is in the book Wish Meal, and it's in the section called Along the Banks of the Wabash, which is actually a quote from the state song of Indiana. Wabash River. The poem is entitled Boys Do That. She was kine in the one eye that worked. Our hands were clumsy with cold. It was sullen for late March. Skinny tires rolling the dimpled asphalt had soaked us tailbone to nape. What on earth could bring you boys here on such a foul afternoon? Brute effort unfolded our cramped limbs to find her just inside the diner door. Her back was stooped. Evelyn, Gladys, Mabel. There was scratch-made chicken and dumpling soup or beef with barley and several sorts of fresh-baked pie. There were age spots all across her hands. One slice left no room to hesitate. Pie, oh, the pie I devoured after guzzling chicken soup was the last tart slice of green gooseberry with sugar like diamond dust. 40 years from that diner, I linger on this catalog page devoted to bare root gooseberry plants. We were pedaling away from home.
Yeah, boy, that is so visual. Well, I feel like I can see it all. In fact, the sugar like diamond dust for one. But,
Yeah.
that was just wonderful. And I have to say,
And now I've got some of those age spots on my hands.
oh, well, let's not go there. We're talking about language and so on. And when I guess when I read the title of that, and it's maybe the era that we live in, I was looking for a different direction. And I thought maybe the boy I didn't know the woman yet, and thinking that maybe he had something nefarious in mind, the things that boys do. And then it was clear right away that this was a waitress. And does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Very. Because I didn't know
very elderly waitress.
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going with that, but I love the use of language. It's like it's not exactly like, when you want somebody to really listen, you whisper. It's not exactly like that, but it is musical in the sense that we anticipate a note or we anticipate a word and it's not there, but we know what it's in our mind what it's going to be or what it should be, and we just fill it in.
Yeah.
And so when you have her names, these possible names that sort of are generational.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just love that.
And you had talked about editing and things like that and revision with respect to that novelist, Mystic River.
Right.
And that's an instance where one of my co-editors at Airlie Press that published Wishmeal, in the manuscript when I had it accepted by Airlie Press,
Right.
"Boys do that" was the final line of the poem.
Oh, really?
And based on her reading of that poem and her suggestion, she said, "I think actually that'd make a better title."
Right.
And then that leaves you with the acknowledgement that these two boys had been riding their bicycles away from home. In a way, running away, if not, actually, sort of.
Well, it was an adventure anyway.
Imagistically,
Yeah. And then I think the adult looking back is significant as well. Before we run out of time, talk about Playa.
Playa is such a good place. In fact, my wife and I donated some money and are being included in a group of former Playa residents that are going there next weekend. It's the last weekend of September, and it happens to coincide with the new moon.
Okay.
And it's an extraordinary place to see the constellations.
Well, geographically, where is it?
It's almost due southeast of Bend.
Okay.
About an hour and a half.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it sits right on Summer Lake, but Summer Lake itself is on the edge of the whole Great Basin.
Okay.
And the Great Basin extends all the way over onto the other side of Utah, up to the east and farther south.
Ah,
And one of the things that's peculiar about the Great Basin is that none of the rivers that flow into it go anywhere. They end
because
in the
it's,
basin.
the elevation is lower? Is that
I
why?
don't know where it's elevation or there's, aquifer things that
Oh,
suck
okay.
the water down.
Okay, sure.
But it's unique in that
Yeah,
sense. And when you're there, you get the feel. I mean, it's so different from Western Oregon, where everything is, the vegetation is so lush and so
Right.
intertwined, and so many different layers in the understory of a forest and
Okay.
whatnot. Over there, it's just wide open
Okay.
space. And so we're going there for what they call the Dark Sky Weekend, and I guess
Oh,
we're
really?
going to learn how to look at the constellations.
okay.
With
But no, this would be a different
telescopes.
time than the,
There'll
than
be
the
a
moon.
Uh,
Or-
yeah, the moon is sort of has no effect.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's why it's a new moon, not a full moon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
you said new
the
moon.
sky is
Right.
free of extraneous light other
Right.
than what you could see from the stars. So that'll be great. But I've been there twice for residency, so I've been
Yeah.
lucky enough, and I'd like to go back. I have
Yeah.
to figure out when I can actually do it. It's an extraordinary place to just go and have the time and the freedom to concentrate just on work.
Now, when you do that, and because I'm not sure that I understand or know the term residency. I mean, I've heard it, but so are you then a mentor as well, or do you just go and do your
You
work?
just go there to do your work.
Okay, all right.
One of the other fabulous things about it is it's not just for writers.
Oh,
So there'll be filmmakers there and visual artists, printmakers, not just poets, but essayists
Right.
and whatnot. So when you're not involved in actually working in your studio,
right.
walking around, you're liable to meet up with one of the other residents, or we have common meals there twice a week. And the conversations are just, I mean, I've always,
So
if
stimulating.
I could have been a visual artist,
Right.
or I could have been a saxophonist, I would have done that in a heartbeat over being a poet. But
Yeah.
it didn't come to me that way.
Yeah.
So to be able to talk to other people and talk about the sort of overlaps and commonalities
Right.
between, a series of prints, for example, of 6 prints that all have to do with
Right.
something, or the way the arc in a piece of film, whether documentary or
Yeah, yeah. So like a character arc, you mean?
yeah,
or-
yeah. It's fun.
I think for me, I have a regular job,
Yeah,
and I go to the regular job, and it's a nice regular job. But when I write, when I give a reading, or when I go hear a reading, or see a musical performance, or we had a terrific local play here last weekend that I attended, just to be in that atmosphere of art. It's just uplifting, and it makes me.
it's
Yeah,
energizing.
it energizes you, and then you want to go do that.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
so what a great venue for you.
And backing up a little, one of the things that I didn't talk about in terms of my experience, my work experience, is that I stayed, my first child was born when my wife was an intern up at Harborview, her internship year as a medical resident.
Oh,
And she was working in the hospital 90 hours a week, not exaggerating, 85,
Right.
90 hours a week.
right.
The only way the kid was going to get raised by one of us is if one of us
Right.
stayed home, and it was not something that she could do at the time. So I stayed home to raise number 1, and before she was finished, we had number 2. And by the time we moved to Oregon, it was easier for me to stay home. So that was sort of my perspective. So to be able to go to a place like Playa, where you don't have to worry about making meals for anybody
Right.
other than yourself,
Right.
and you don't have to worry about what you need to get done in the yard and the garden and who you're going to have to chase down for their,
Right.
soccer practice or
Yeah.
flute lessons, etc. It
Yeah.
was just, to just partition and work
Yeah.
and enjoy whatever new sort of energies are inherent in a place that's that special, that's
Right.
that different.
Yeah. And how long were you there? Or how long are the sessions?
You can apply for different. I think the least is 2 weeks,
Okay.
and the longest is 6 weeks. The first time I was there for 3 weeks, and the second time I was there for 2 weeks.
That sounds great. Tim Whitsel, thank you so much. I know you made a long drive to come up here, and
Not a problem.
just
My
really,
pleasure, Steve.
really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you so much.
And I love your work too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Folks, there we go again. That's The Writing Life. I'm Stephen W. Long, and as always, I invite you to contact me through my website, stephenwlong.com. Tim, do you have a way that people could contact you?
Yeah, I
think you do.
have a website, timwhitsel.com.
Okay, probably we get there. It is.
Also, you can check me out on my email, timwhitsel@gmail.com.
Okay, great. Terrific poet, and I bet you would like some feedback on that. So,
Thanks.
all right. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time on The Writing Life.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know, you guys wanna do one just with yourself without me doing the
We're
bongos?
done, if they got enough, they got enough.
They got enough? Probably, okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch.
Oh.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can use a bite too.